Hey, it's Mike here, and today I'm reacting to the billionaire who's been in the news over the last few months for spending about $2 million a year to fight the aging process. Yes, Bryan Johnson considers himself an anti-aging athlete. He has about 30 doctors and experts working with him to punch Father Time in the face.
He has actually hired a team of 30 doctors and health experts. To keep track of his health, Johnson undergoes numerous blood tests, ultrasounds, and MRIs.
So we're gonna see what they've come up with. What does he eat in particular, which I'm really curious about.
What you see here in front of me, this food, is the diet that has produced near perfect biomarkers.
What supplements does he take? He was in the news for taking about 100 supplements. I thought about him because that model in the previous video I responded to took over 40 in a day, which we thought was a lot. No, that's child's play. And I actually think one of those supplements could be hurting his aging process, and there's another one that I think he's missing. So we'll get into that and generally look at what his sleep and exercise routine is pretty quick because there's so much going on here. So let's just go. Bryan Johnson made his money as a tech entrepreneur, and he says that he has reversed his aging by about 5 years since starting what he calls, Blueprint. He's got a whole page. You can look at what he does for free. Despite being 45 years old, he says that different parts of his body are at different ages.
I'm chronologically 45 years old. Biologically, I'm a few hundred ages. My left ear is 64. My fitness test, to say I'm 18. My heart is 37. My diaphragm strength is 18.
Yep, my left pinky toe, it's 100 years old. My right pinky toe, 10 years old. So I either have the face of a 15-year-old or a 40-year-old, depending on how recently I've shaved. I'm getting close to the 40 zone. The main criticism I see in comments and such is that he looks his age. He looks like somebody that could be 45, but I will say, if you look at this picture of him from 2017, he definitely looks like his skin is healthier. He does a bunch of skincare stuff. Probably also did some eyebrow darkening, has skin treatments and stuff like that. But he also considers himself the most measured man, and so he has all of these biomarkers taken and his performance in various ways. And so he says he has the lung capacity of an 18-year-old. And yeah, his tanless face and his eccentricities have gotten him some attention. I mean, he was in the news for blood swapping with his son, and his dad essentially getting plasma from his son and giving plasma to his dad with the hopes that younger plasma would have a beneficial effect. But he said he stopped doing this blood boy routine after he didn't really see a particular benefit. But I can't mention this intergenerational blood pact without looking at this image. I don't know, is it wacky or is it just a nice wholesome family picture? You can decide. I actually have a picture of his future family tree right here. Just himself stacked upon himself. I have to crack some jokes, but now let's actually get to what I think is the most interesting thing, what he eats, because again, he has all those experts he works with, and he says that he's come to his current diet by looking at biomarkers consistently.
What you see here in front of me, this food, is the diet that has produced near perfect biomarkers.
Now, what diet gets him the healthiest blood markers? Well, it says he eats a vegan diet. Yeah, particularly says he eats about 70 pounds of vegetables a month, which as a vegan for 12 years, that's child's play. He also does a bit of an intermittent fasting thing where he doesn't eat past noon, and he also eats a little under 2,000 calories a day, purposefully maintaining a calorie deficit, which does make sense because eating too many calories, drives all sorts of aging hormones into overdrive. Drive. He seems to eat mostly the same thing every day, but then he switches up his dinners. Here's a YouTube short of him talking about it.
When I wake in the morning, this is the green giant.
Yeah, he's got some good stuff in it. He has spermidine, which is something that's actually high in soy and whole grains, as well as some animal products, but those are high in saturated fat, which he's knocked out for a reason. But yeah, from the journal Science, quote, increased uptake of spermidine has protective effects against cancer, metabolic disease, heart disease, and neurodegeneration, so obviously fighting aging. And one thing which was almost a red flag is he has those amino acids in there, and those are largely branched chain amino acids. And as you may know, too much of leucine, for example, will boost IGF-1, which, will accelerate aging and fuel cancer in high amounts. But looking at the package, it's only 1.25 grams of leucine. So, I think he'll be okay. From this study, 3 grams of leucine raised skeletal muscle IGF-1. However, it didn't raise blood levels of IGF-1. He does get another nearly 3 grams of leucine and other protein powders throughout the day, but He did check his IGF-1, which was optimal. However, this study was on skeletal muscle levels and not blood levels, so who knows? And I do have to mention, even though he says he eats a vegan diet, he's absolutely not an ethical vegan. For example, he takes collagen peptides, which despite being available from vegan protein sources, the same peptides, just little chains of amino acids, well, he takes animal-derived ones, so.
I'll work out for an hour and then I'll eat this, the super veggie, broccoli, cauliflower, mushrooms, black lentils, garlic, and ginger.
He has this super veggie bowl, which I will say does look a little bit like that cover your ass bowl I made a while back. He just boosts it with a few more ingredients like mushrooms.
And I'll drizzle extra virgin olive oil.
Ah, he's gonna die. Extra virgin olive oil. Obviously, I made the video Oil a Vegan Killer, but I've had to make like 5 nuanced videos after that, including my oil ranking video. My concern here could be that, you know, a large portion of extra virgin olive oil is actually fraudulent. So he could just be having normal olive oil, although he's really rich, so he probably has fancy olive oil. And normal olive oil is more likely to cause some type of artery impairment. We have one study showing it with extra virgin olive oil, which conflicts with other studies, but he's only having 1 tablespoon, which is like hardly any saturated fat. He's obviously not eating too many calories, which would be my main concern with oil, people just drizzling on everything and getting a lot of excess calories. And then maybe saturated fat also adding up a little bit. But I will say his cholesterol is 158, which tracks for a vegan. That's about normal.
And also 100% dark chocolate. 1 hour later, I'll eat nutty pudding, which is macadamia nuts, flaxseed, walnuts, berries, and pea protein, and pomegranate.
The nutty bowl is interesting. I mean, from the picture, is he kind of just eating some straight powder on there? I'd also love to know why the fixation on macadamia nuts, but I think it's good he has a ton of antioxidants from plants as well as some omegas, and he is grinding up the chia in there, which is better for absorption. And the third actual meal varies. He has, you know, some type of salad, which generally has vinegar, which is awesome for blood sugar control, or a sweet potato, and you can just sort of pause to read those ingredients. But yeah, in terms of the actual foods that he is eating, he's eating a whole food, plant-based diet with a ton of antioxidants. You know, it's exactly what I advocate for eating, so I feel pretty proud of that. But let's get to those pills. Yeah, he takes about 100 pills a day, and we're gonna not look at all of them, but we are gonna look at some in detail, the ones that I find interesting. And I will say, if he just found the right multivitamin, he could probably knock like 20 or 30 of these pills off of there. I'm surprised that a lot of it actually is just more plants in the form of extracts, like broccoli extract, cocoa, ginger, garlic, turmeric with pepper, and so he's not just eating whole plant foods, he's adding on to that. At first I was thrown off by the once a week B12, but he is taking a B complex that includes quite a bit of B12 daily. Not sure why he needs both, but why would once a week be sketchy? Quick tangent here. We have a limited absorption. Like, you can keep taking these higher and higher levels, which sounds fancier when you're buying the product, but the amount that you're absorbing is still only gonna be a few micrograms. For example, if you're taking 500 micrograms, you're only gonna probably absorb about 10 micrograms, but then we lose between like 1.5 and 5 a day, according to this study. So spreading that out across a week, it's not looking that great. But if you're just taking like 50 micrograms a day, every day, you would absorb more. Now, it's a long list, maybe I missed it, but I didn't see on there that he was taking any type of probiotic, which brings me to today's sponsor, Seed's DS01 Daily Synbiotic. Synbiotic is a prebiotic and a probiotic. I love Seed because they actually started off as researchers who then started a company, and they have stuff backing up their claims. We've got 53.6 billion active bacterial cell units from 24 different strains in each capsule, and those strains are scientifically shown to support various areas of health, such as gut barrier function, gut immunity, skin health, heart health, and more. And because it is summer, today's theme is summer foods. Let's look at some summer foods and their gut benefit for you guys. First food is blackberries. As this study mentions, berry antioxidants have several positive gut biome effects. Next is peaches, which the American Heart Association mentions are loaded with various fiber that, of course, help the gut. And finally, we have watermelon, which has more lycopene than tomatoes, and lycopene has gut protective effects as well. And Lindy and I have been taking Seed since 2021, and so we love it. I'm laughing because I just said 2001 and she had to correct me. But if you would like to try it, of course, click the link below and use the code MIKE at checkout for 25% off your first month's supply. Thank you, Steve. The next one, which I think could have a risk to take, is vitamin E. Yeah, in a normal dietary form, it is anti-cancerous, for example, but studies on supplements in vitamin E are either doesn't help or actually could hurt. From this study, they concluded that vitamin E supplementation increased the risk of prostate cancer. Ouch. And that's in healthy men. But this is the potential issue with just trying to take everything that you hear that could be good for you. Well, maybe one of those things is not good.
Dr. Rigved Tadwalker says trying to reverse the aging process could be dangerous.
Anything taken to an extreme, including a mix of supplements, excessive exercise, excessive changes to the diet, can potentially be harmful to the body.
You know, the chances of taking something that is harmful just goes up. And one example of that, though it's completely anecdotal, a lot of this is anecdotal, was one Redditor who tried to do his regimen and then started getting a rash, so he had to dial back. And then he quit altogether after his sort of heart rate variability and heart rate numbers got worse, and then his gastritis returned. Maybe it's coincidence, maybe it was caused by one of the probably 1,000 ingredients between all of those supplements. Another thing that was interesting here is it says he takes EPA, which is a long chain omega-3, but it's not the longest chain, which is DHA. Our body does convert EPA into DHA, but why not just take DHA directly? That's like one of the few things that I take, and that's in the form of algae oil, but this is another reason that he's not ethically vegan. He is actually taking fish oil in the form of anchovy oil. Ew. Can we just call it pressed mini fish juice? Because that's what it actually is. Anyway, there isn't a risk for bioaccumulation with anchovies because they're so small, at least that we've seen so far. But PCBs and dioxin in other fish oil is a risk from this paper. Due to the tendency of persistent organic pollutants to accumulate and expose organisms, omega-3 supplements can contain sufficient POPs to present a risk to consumers. And the salmon, actually, which people think is so perfect, was quite high. So there's a benefit to taking the algae one as well. But now let's just get to some more unique stuff. He's taking hyaluronic acid for skin, which theoretically should help his skin. Now on to the other more serious stuff. He was taking human growth hormone, but he said he stopped that due to symptoms. He does take a testosterone patch, which I had to question a little bit. It's the first thing that I started questioning in terms of actual longevity results. So like another Bryan Johnson, the Liver King, yep, same name, just spelled differently, he is also on some roids. Not nearly as much though. Yes, testosterone can help with frailty into older age, but there's a trend here that is interesting, and that is that women live longer. Could it be the estrogen protecting arteries? Or could it be that testosterone has some aging effects itself? An interesting finding was from this study on eunuchs in Korea. They've been castrated, so they don't got no balls no more. And the results were them living like 14 to 19 years longer than their counterparts, which is absurd. No, their percentage of centenarians was also off the charts. However, it's a pretty small group. It could be confounding factors. But going to that estrogen again, I mean, if you just give male mice estrogen, they live longer. With all this information, should he just transition to female? And he says he's an anti-aging athlete, but he's clearly too scared to join the big leagues, which is the women's league, which lives longer. But he may have found a way around that. He is taking estrogen, yes, 17 alpha estradiol, but it is not a feminizing estrogen, as this study mentions, and that it has reproducible, robust effects, including increased male lifespan, but that's in mice only. Now, there are a bunch of things that he takes that are specifically touted to be life extending. We won't touch on all of them, but the first is this duo he takes, which is rapamycin and acarbose, which is a diabetes drug. These are both prescription drugs, so the average person can't just get these. But the $1 billion though, the world's your prescription filling oyster. Rapamycin appears to have some cancer benefits. It's an immunosuppressant drug and does have that metabolic pathway connection to aging. And here's a whole paper you can read. I'll link below if you're interested in that. But from this study that gave those two drugs together on mice, it was just mice. You can see from this chart that they did live longer. But that is a problem with a lot of these things. No, it's mostly just rodent evidence, which you know how I feel about. Next, he actually just straight up takes aspirin every single day, which he says there's some evidence for. However, the headline from this NIH study recap was that it didn't appear to help with lifespan in elderly adults. However, aspirin intake is inversely associated with frailty in older men, so less frail, who knows? When I saw he was taking a bunch of pills, I immediately was like, he's got to be taking metformin, which is another diabetes drug that is generally just prescription. I touched on this in my David Sinclair anti-aging video. He doesn't look suspicious at all. Why metformin? Well, they found that the mortality rate in people with diabetes taking metformin was lower than people without diabetes, so that's gotten a lot of attention lately. And then we also have NR, nicotinamide riboside, which is supposed to boost that NAD, which I think if you're interested in that, just go watch my David Sinclair video. We're talking about another one of those pathways of aging that could potentially be helped out. It is a case from this study that NR does raise NAD in cells, which this study says is an effective strategy to benefit health. It is one of the more expensive supplements on there at about $90. He also takes taurine, which has made some headlines recently. There was a study where it did extend the life of mice by about 10%. Again, we're not mice. Until recently, it has been just mice studies, but monkey studies are also showing good results now too, for health span at least, looking at biomarkers. We still need human trials though. Note, while taurine is mostly in animal products, nori is equivalent to beef and chicken on a serving per serving basis. If someone wants that source, about 40 milligrams per sheet of nori. Then we can move on to low dose lithium that he takes, which is one that I was not familiar with, so I did a little bit of a dive into. You're probably familiar with it as a bipolar drug or mental health related drug, but if you take it in low enough doses, it's actually an over-the-counter supplement you can buy off Amazon. And the idea is that you want to have adequate lithium going through your system in order for it to be neuroprotective, and it does appear that it is neuroprotective in, again, rodent studies, as well as petri dish studies of human cells. And in terms of human data, this review claims that low-dose lithium has, quote, significant benefits versus placebo for attenuating cognitive decline, and that it's safe. What? Yeah, we have this small 2019 study, which is actually quite controversial, and a lot of the findings weren't statistically significant, but they did find for dementia patients that participants in the placebo group displayed cognitive and functional decline, whereas lithium-treated patients remained stable over 2 years. What? We really need that study to be repeated, but let's move on to the sleep and the exercise, general lifestyle stuff. Well, for sleep, I was worried that he wasn't going to be sleeping enough when he said he woke up at 5:30, but he must go to bed really early because he's definitely getting his 8 hours. And that's important because if you're getting less than 5 hours, which is really low, then you can have an increased risk for mortality, and that's likely due to the oxidative stress of your body not being able to recover with sleep. And he has a long video on his whole sleep routine. He's got like an art to it. He does take melatonin, and then he goes into a super dark room, sleeps alone, has a sleep tracker, all of that stuff. And in terms of exercise, you can just go to his webpage and read all the details, but I was surprised to see that he caps his exercise at about 1 hour a day. So he's not doing anything extreme. Again, those comments were like, oh, he probably exercises like 4 hours a day. He's gonna like burn himself out and like not live as long. No, it's pretty balanced. He says his most beneficial single exercise is just taking stacks of hundreds and ripping them apart. It's a good wrist workout. In the end, there are so many details on his website and things that he does that I would have loved to go into more detail in, but there's only so much time in a video. And I will say a lot of longevity seems to be, if you're rich enough, you can get it. I mean, you want a prescription for something that you don't qualify for in terms of a disease? Just throw some money at it. You want a team of experts checking a bunch of biomarkers even though you're healthy? Again, money will do that, but for the average person, you can't do that. However, this does show that there are a lot of things that are cheap, like whole plant foods. A lot of those are cheap. That is what this whole team of experts and all these biomarker readings have shown are the best for him. His cholesterol is 150. His other numbers are quote unquote optimal. You can just scroll down that list. Unfortunately, a lot of people who have, jobs where they have to work certain hours and things like that aren't going to be able to get the sleep situation under control, or apartments that are noisy and stuff that I'm sad not everybody can at least try, but at least he's putting all this stuff out there for free, so I applaud him for that. But yeah, in terms of his diet, even though it is a vegan diet with some non-vegan supplements, it's absolutely not an ethical vegan lifestyle. He's eating a plant-based lifestyle. And so what do you think? Do you think it's worth putting this much effort into living longer, or should you just chill out and live your life probably for a little bit shorter? Let me know. And of course, if you'd like to try Seeds DS01 Daily Symbiotic, you can click the link below and use the code Mike at checkout for 25% off your first month supply. That's it. Feel free to like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.